This is Vikes Now, and this is our first ever guest. We are welcoming Sean Borman, who writes with me at Vikings Territory. We were and are lieutenants of Joe Johnson, who founded or inherited the site about 5 years ago. And so, yes, Sean's specialty, so to speak, is the salary cap, in particular the Vikings salary cap. And what I plan to do on all these guest segments is subtract me from the equation because you listeners, you viewers, you get me throughout the week, and I want to get the opinions of our guests. So I'm gonna rapid fire shoot some questions out to Sean, and we'll start from there. Sean, how are you tonight?
Doing well. And you?
I am spectacular, sir. I'm really anxious to pick your mind on some of these. So let's get started. I want to start with your specialty. Like I mentioned, it was the salary cap. So the Vikings right now, depends on the website you look at, it looks like they have about 12 million in cap space. And I know that 9 million or so of that has to be reserved for free agency, or excuse me, for the draft and for practice squad dudes and whatnot. But in your opinion, for this season, are the Vikings in good cap shape or is it meh?
So yeah, I thought about that for a little while because it's kind of an interesting question. But if I had to choose one, I really want to say both because they ultimately will be okay. They'll obviously comply with the cap by the start of the regular season, but they're not in great shape. They've been using void years a little more and more, which is not necessarily a death sentence by any means for the cap, but it's just interesting that they've kind of been forced into that position this year. You've seen guys, like Patrick Peterson, Jesse Davis, some pretty small deals, guys like that taking a 1 year void year next year to kind of just lower the cap hit this year. So it's not a great situation ultimately, but they'll be okay. They have Rob Brzezinski. He's fantastic cap manager. So it could be better. There's some pretty big, speaking of void years, there's some pretty big ones coming down the road with your Daniil Hunter, your Kirk Cousins. That's not till 2024. But the more of those compile, the more you're going to see some issues down the road cap wise.
Okay. I have a question that we'll get to in about 5 minutes, and that's on the notion of kicking the can down the road. So I hope that you'll talk a little bit more about that. But what some of our viewers have asked me about, whether it's in my vikingsterritory.com inbox or in the comments on the show, is do you think, good sir, that the Vikings will indeed clear some cap space by restructuring Kendricks and Dalvin to make one more quasi splashy move? Or do you believe that this is kind of it?
Yeah, that one I'm also on the fence with. You had me on before, and we had McKinney and
Mm-hmm.
some of the folks on, and I was completely wrong by, with my speculation is in terms of what the team would do. I thought for sure that they were going to start clearing some space, clearing some vets off the books, and they went the other way. They decided to keep the roster intact and kind of triple down on some guys that I didn't expect them to. So it's really interesting strategy. I'm not totally against it by any means, but from a cap situation, it's definitely interesting. Right now, like you alluded to, they're about 12 million under the cap. I'm just looking at my numbers here. Uh, when you account for regular season items, they're roughly, well, after the draft, around seven, accounting about 4 million or so for the top 51 cap number. Effective cap space, they're just under or just over the cap, I should say.
Okay.
So when you account for things like in-season spending, player 52 and 53 contracts, that's going to bring that 7 million down. So all this to say, I really, they're kind of strapped as it is, as I've kind of alluded to. We don't have Chris Reed's numbers in yet, the new offensive lineman that they picked up, former Maverick, which is awesome. And I don't see maybe a splashy signing, but I can see, signing like another safety. I know Darren Wolfson, Doogie has alluded to that on his podcast. So there's maybe some competition for Cam Bynum. but I can see that being closer to a vet minimum deal. So it's really not going to be something that you need to open up a lot of cap space for, which is what um, a move like restructuring Kendricks or Delvin would do. That's going to open up about $5 million each way. So I really don't think they need to if they want to pick up a safety for around the vet minimum,
Okay.
which is kind of the way I lean, I guess.
Okay. That's fair. On this notion, like, so the potential Kendricks restructure or a Dalvin restructure, or what we saw with Thielen and Harrison Smith, there's always like this little debate about whether they should get an attaboy for allowing that restructure to happen. It always confuses me because I'm of the opinion that they have to play ball in the sense they have to allow the money to be wiggled around. But then if you even announce that, hey, Thielen restructured his contract, you usually get somebody blowing back saying, well, he doesn't lose any money, so he's not that much of a hero. Can you define whether or not a player is a good guy or right in the middle of a restructure?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and it's a little tough to answer. But I'll put it this way. Most of the time, the majority of the time, the team is going to have automatic conversion rights built into the contract. So if you have contracts like Daniil Hunter's or Harrison Smith's that have a roster bonus built into it, the team can really just automatically pull that trigger and spread out the cap hit for future years. But that's a little bit different than, say, an Adam Thielen who restructured how his money is paid out in a way.
Okay.
And it's going to need the team will need his permission to basically do that. So it kind of depends on the restructure, to be honest with you. So I would say somebody like the Thielen's a little more, I guess, team friendly in a way.
Okay.
So it's more of an attaboy for somebody like him than
Okay.
say Harrison Smith. But it was kind of interesting the way you phrased that too, because like I said, the contracts that are like your typical base salary to signing bonus conversion, that's kicking the can, but it's something that every team is going to do.
Okay.
So something with Thielen and Smith that I like to think about is why do those extensions in the first place?
Yeah.
This team really didn't have a say in that, or I should say, this regime. It was more, they were, provided that.
Sure.
So when it comes to those, I see those. I struggle with those because obviously Harrison Smith is overpaid. I just feel like they shouldn't have gotten those contracts to begin with, to be completely honest. So
Okay.
the new regime is doing what they can to make cap in the short term, and long term they're giving themselves more outs and more options in case those players kind of start to.
It seemed like Spielman was more apt to give out those sentimental contracts, like the touchy-feely, or the guys that inspire warm fuzzies, I should say, seem like Spielman wanted to take care of them. And now it's coming home to roost or whatnot. But on these moves, so notably, this offseason, we've had Harrison Phillips, Jordan Hicks, Zadarius Smith, Jesse Davis, Chris Reed, Chandon Sullivan. Those are, I mean, Zadarius was a huge splash. The other ones are kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool. Which one do you think will end up having the biggest 2022 impact on the field?
I thought about this for a while because I like to be different and kind of go against the grain and be like, oh, this obscure person can have a great year. But I got to go Zadarius Smith. He's seemed like kind of the home run signing of the offseason. So I just, if you're talking about impact, I really think it's going to be Zadarius Smith. It could end up being like a Chris Reed in terms of value.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like Zadarius Smith. I mean, he's got such an incredible skill set. And I keep thinking of Daniil Hunter and Everson Griffin when they were at their peak. I mean, look at how vicious the Vikings defense was, and you could argue that Zadarius Smith might be a step up from Everson Griffin, at least last year's version of Everson Griffin. So there's a lot to like there. I actually watched a video by Pete Bursich kind of breaking down film on Zadarius Smith, and maybe that's kind of persuading me a little bit too. But I mean, he can rush from the outside, he can rush from the inside, just like Griffin did when him and Hunter were so deadly. He's got, a power rush, a counter move, finesse. He's a very smart pass rusher. And so just pairing him with Hunter, I feel like that's going to be just massive for this defense.
Okay, so yeah, you're on board for Za'Darius, and I think that is the smart pick, the trendy pick, because in his purest form, yeah, it's going to be deadly. Now, here's I have a litany of guests coming up as I get this show more off the ground, and I'm going to ask this of every single guest that comes on in the next 3 weeks because it's just guaranteed topic material. And you can give me one or two names. I know it's tough to pigeonhole into one. So the NFL draft takes place 3 weeks from Thursday. What is your official pick for the Vikings with their first pick? I'll say it like that in case they trade back. Who do you think they select? One or two dudes, or if you can't narrow it down to human names, then give me a position.
Sure, yeah, and honestly, I'm like notorious for myself, but I really don't look at the draft until like last minute. I'm just, now that the calendar's turned to April, I'm just starting to look at it a little bit more with the top 30 visits back now. Now that COVID's over with, so I'm not a huge draft expert. I'll put it that way, but I really like cornerback and defensive line. I feel like that's what the team kind of really needs the most right now. A big Stingley guy, just based off his name alone and the fact that he plays cornerback, and some of his highlights are pretty ridiculous. So I'll just say Stingley if I got to put a name on it. But yeah, I like cornerback, and I found the stat interesting too. I was listening to a podcast, Star Tribune guys, and Michael Rand put out a stat that they haven't taken a defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds in 8 years. So since 2013, Sharif Floyd.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a position too that they could handle maybe even in the first round, but obviously the second could be an option as well too.
Okay, yeah. To expand on that, they haven't taken an edge rusher in the first round since 2005 with Erasmus James, and they've gotten away with it. This isn't like bitching about like, whoa, our defensive line has sucked because of it. No, it's been wonderful because of Jared Allen, Kevin Williams, Brian Robinson, Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffin, and Andre Patterson. So we've gotten away with a lot, and if you look at retrospect, it's just glorious that that's happened. But now it's time to get with the times and inspire an even greater pass rush, especially because you don't have Zimmer in the saddle, who's almost guaranteed to find some sort of wizardry to get to passers, even with breadcrumbs when Danielle Hunter went down. All right, go ahead.
Just right off to kind of pivot off that is, I mean, look what the Rams kind of did to their defense down the stretch last year too. Just adding those playmakers and those ridiculous pass rushers that really helped them out on the stretch.
Yeah, I've on this show, I think twice I've mentioned, so Buffalo Bills are bona fide Super Bowl contenders. They keep getting nipped by the Chiefs. They know something that the Vikings don't or the rest of the world don't, because I swear to God, they have like 5 pass rushers, from Gregory Rousseau to Von Miller to AJ Espinoza. Oh, God, I always forget them when I run them down, but there's 2 others that's what their job. And like Mario Addison's in the middle, by the way, or Ed Oliver, excuse me. And so they have like 5 of them, and we're happy that we have 2. So I think that some point soon in the draft, probably in the first 2 or 3 picks, that you'll see an edge rusher, even though they have Za'Darius and Danielle, because you want to plan like this Za'Darius Hunter thing could flop. And on this show a year from tonight, we could be complaining about Za'Darius back got hurt. Danielle finally put his foot down and says he wants the hell out of here. And then you'd be looking at the roster and going, oh. So I'm with you that an edge rusher should be on the menu earlier in the draft. Here's the next question with your cap brain. The second to last question at that. When the Vikings restructured Thielen and Harrison Smith, was it a true blue kicking the can down the road and a mortgaging of the future? And if so, is what the Vikings do with those contracts different than what other playoff contending teams do?
That's kind of what I was stumbling about earlier. I have to break it down by player because I can't really lump them together because they're just like 2 vastly different restructures, honestly. Because Adam Thielen he just shifted around his money. It's basically the same money that he's getting, but they just kind of shifted how he receives it. Like I was saying, they were how do I say it? They obviously added the void year for cap purposes, but they increased the salary tied to per game roster bonuses.
Okay.
So I found that interesting because it's basically if he's on the field, he's producing, he'll get paid. Whereas the Harrison Smith, he just got a huge, massive overpayment, if you will, last year under the you're saying the hometown Spielman
Lifetime achievement contract.
exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it's very. I wouldn't say that any other team would handle it differently. Obviously, the new regime's handling it as well as they can, and like I said, they are doing what they can to lower the cap hit this year and give themselves more outs in the future. So in that regard, like I said with the Harrison Smith roster bonus, any team's going to do that. It's kind of a clause built into the contract. It's like, here, why not use it and spread it out? You're not going to just go with an increased cap hit for no reason. So it's basically common practice, I would say, especially in the Harrison Smith deal, given what they were given.
Okay.
So it's not a contract, like I said, that I would have done. Harrison Smith is still the second highest paid safety in the league right now, and he's 33. It just seemed like that was it was an overpay. I'll just keep at it with that word, but it's interesting because I'm just looking at the numbers, and this is where I keep getting distracted. But next year they can restructure both those guys on their current deals, and Thielen would be playing. This is a simple base salary to signing bonus conversion. So Adam Thielen next year could be playing on an $11 million cap hit
Mm-hmm.
in 2023, and Harrison Smith could be at 9.79.
Okay.
So these are very maneuverable contracts still. So it's not like the end of the road. I know a lot of fans were actually upset when they saw the Thielen numbers and saw that his cap hits are going up the next couple of years. And I kind of see that. I understand it with the shock value,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a big deal. Like I said, there's a lot of options and outs. There's a lot of flexibility in those contracts now. So it's in a way they're making the best out of that situation. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
So it's by no means was it a mortgaging the future move.
Okay. All right. Then my final question tonight has to be about the quarterback, and you're documented via your tweets, and then when you were on the McKinney podcast a couple of weeks ago, as being somewhat lukewarm on Kirk Cousins. You're not a enthusiast or a homer about him, but you also don't dislike him or hate him. And so you're one of those folks that's right in the middle that really doesn't get a lot of press because you don't bitch very loud. You're just like, yep, he's pretty good. With the right system, he's probably doable. But with that lukewarm mindset about the QB1, does his presence on this roster with a new offensive-minded head coach and Kevin O'Connell, does this give you excitement, or is it like, oh, God?
Yeah, I thought about this actually quite a bit today. Short answer, yes, I'm 100% excited with him and the Kevin O'Connell offense. I'm actually very excited to see what he can do. I just thought he was very mishandled with Zimmer and how Zimmer handled the offense. I've always thought of Kirk Cousins as just a great football mind and somebody who can process things very quickly. So somebody who can really give him an offense that plays to his strengths, and maybe he'll have a little bit more control over what happens. It seems like a win-win. His downfield accuracy is obviously phenomenal. It's a good match with Jefferson and Thielen and KJ Osborne, for that matter, too, who's kind of coming onto the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be a much more exciting offense to watch, given that they'll probably be a little bit more pass-centered and centered around the run. So it's honestly the exact reason why I said for like the past 3 or 4 years that the Vikings should go out and spend for a proven upper tier guard, or two for that matter, in free agency, just so you can really highlight Kirk Cousins' strengths. We know what they are at this point. And if you give him the confidence and the time to throw in the pocket, I mean, I think you could maybe even raise that ceiling a little bit. So that's why I've felt that way for a while. They haven't spent on guard in quite a while, so I'm still a little frustrated by that. But hopefully things will change with the Chris Reed, the Jesse Davis signings, Wyatt Davis. Hopefully somebody will emerge from that group and become the guard that they're looking for.
Yeah, they almost have to, because this is the biggest competition of semi-credible players that we've had since Joe Berger was good, decent 5 years ago. And so for this not to have a salvageable commodity at right guard, you'd have to have 4 dudes who suck and a coaching staff who can't get anything out of them. So I like what they're doing in that respect. Of course, the home run acquisition of Assure for someone like that would have been cool, but for the life of us, nobody will hear us out on that one in Eagan, Minnesota.
If I could add to that quick, I thought it was interesting. Spielman actually appeared on I think it was an interview recently. It might have been Stacey Dales with ESPN. But I found it interesting that he said that the Kirk Cousins contract was never an issue until the pandemic year when the cap went down.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting. He finally admitted that, hey, that was actually kind of an issue once the cap went down, but it's not anymore. I think his extension was actually kind of team friendly, not really team friendly, but it was a little bit more in line with where I see his market value.
Yep. The only thing you had to give up was the no trade. That was the kicker.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that was like the little FU that had to go in there from his camp that said, if we're going to take 35 million, which is somewhat affordable for a guy who throws 30 touchdowns as the sun rises, I think that was the thing that they had to surrender. But we'll conclude on this thought on Spielman's. I didn't see that, but that's really insightful. You have to imagine when he inked that $84 million guaranteed deal that we all cursed, not all of us, but the naysayers cursed. He had to be going through his head thinking, well, the salary cap's going to keep going up, and if anybody challenged him on it saying, are you sure about that? He would be like, what, are we just not going to have football games anymore? Like, what, is there going to be some worldwide pandemic that's going to make the salary cap shrink? Well, yeah. So it's kind of how we think about right now for any naysayers about any of the deals on the Vikings or anywhere, is your rebuttal is kind of like, well, the cap's going to continue to go up. And so I think Spielman probably had that mentality 4 years ago, and then bada bing, the pandemic hits and they shrink the son of a bitch for a year. And yeah, then I'm sure that really tightened his belt. And that's why Cousins' cap hit that year was only 21 million.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. And I think that folks should be a little bit careful when they say that the cap is going to go up automatically, because look at what just happened. We didn't see that coming, and who knows what's going to happen. It's not, I understand it. It's easy to like, oh, it's going to keep going up a lot, because the league revenue is going up a lot, but it's just not 100%. And I like how Andrew Brandt, he's actually a former Packers executive, put it. He's like, hope is not a plan. He's like, you really have to not plan on that and just be a little bit more smart about it and plan, think ahead. Something like this may happen down the road. Hopefully it doesn't, but just be aware of that.
Excellent. All right. Sean Borman, VikingsTerritory.com. I appreciate you joining, being our inaugural guest on Vikes Now. I hope to have you back on at least a monthly basis. Any parting words for the viewers?
Absolutely. I'm honored that you had me, and I saw you've got a great lineup already scheduled, so I'm honored that you even thought of me, and I'm in with that group. So yeah, definitely I will be on as much as you want.
Hell yeah. All right. That's all we got. And for the rest of the viewers, I will be back on Tuesday, and Skol, baby.